Let's put 2 minutes on the clock and your time starts now. All right, time is up. Let's have a look at some answers. This is one of those cases where you just have that pit, that sinking feeling in your stomach where you think, oh, this is not going to be good. So of course here, this is something where reading through, we're pretty sure we know what the diagnosis is going to be or something along those lines. And this is where the KFP shines in terms of not just assessing kind of what you think the diagnosis is, but take that next step then. So this question's saying that not only do we want 3 specific examination findings, things we're looking for, but apply that to the setting of the most likely diagnosis. So here some examples would be pallor, suggesting anemia, bony tenderness over the ribs or spine, and admittedly there is a little bit of overlap here between the history that's been provided versus what those examination findings are. In this case, you would definitely get the marks there because it's a difference between diffuse bone pain versus eliciting that bony tenderness. Eliciting the symptom is the examination finding itself. Now, of course, with this, we're also potentially going to see things like reduced height or evidence of kyphosis suggesting vertebral compression fractures. I don't think you should use the word or in there. I think you would specify reduced height or evidence of kyphosis, not both. That makes sense. I just use the word to describe the word not to use. You get me. And of course, hepatosplenomegaly, increased activity of those organs and engorgement. As we get to kind of the potentially less specific things, we're getting into going from 2 marks per one of those responses through to kind of 1 mark per one of these responses. And this would be things like evidence of peripheral neuropathy or reduced sensation in the hands or feet, something along those lines there. Evidence of mild infections or chronic or recurrent infections. Evidence of bruising, blurring of vision or decreased visual acuity, being the changes to the viscosity of fluids within the body, and peripheral edema, having that increased fluid retention and reshifting of fluid into different spaces also would get you a mark. Now, of course, we still haven't actually given away what it is, and that might be relevant to upcoming questions. So let's move to question number 2 then. Let's get 2 minutes on the clock and your time starts now. right, time is up. Let's have a look at the answers. And of course, please note here again, we haven't actually given away what the diagnosis is yet, but it's asking you to again take that next step about what investigations would be appropriate to confirm the most likely diagnosis. So for this, we'd be doing our initial, I should specify what initial investigation. So this is our first line kind of things. What would you do for that initial screening? So here we're going to, of course, go to our serum protein electrophoresis. And again, if we want those bonus marks to specify why we're doing it, to identify monoclonal paraproteins. We'd be looking at serum calcium to assess for hypercalcemia, as you would expect with bony metastases, as is being hinted at in the history. A complete blood count to evaluate for anemia or pancytopenia. Again, I wouldn't use or, but things, if you're putting one or the other kind of thing, you're definitely getting good marks there. And of course, the big thing in the stem there is about that bone pain. So plain x-rays of the axial or appendicular skeleton to assess for those lytic lesions / fractures. I think if you're saying either axial skeleton or appendicular skeleton, lytic lesions or fractures, you're going to get those 2 marks there. Now, moving on as well, we'd also be doing our urine protein electrophoresis, looking for those Bence-Jones proteins. And of course, serum creatinine for calculation of our renal function, which is potentially going to be impacted here. Having a look in from the chat, we also have mentioned here tachycardia, which, this is looking like a response from the last questions. But yes, all of those would definitely be fantastic answers for that last question there. Okay, so let's have a look then. Moving on to the third question for this case. Let's get 2 minutes on the clock, and your time starts now. All right, time is up. Let's have a look at those answers. So lots of options here, but we do notice we do have some grouping in. So again, we want to specify the urgency, what we're doing and why we're doing it. So here we'd have a standard or a semi-urgent. I think you'd get away with either or. Referral to a physiotherapist for that supervised strengthening / resistance exercises. So one or the other there, specifying why you're doing it. 2 marks, fantastic. Suggesting participation in low-impact aerobic activities like swimming or walking to build endurance. Standard / semi-urgent referral to a dietitian consultation for a tailored high-nutrient diet plan. Try and build up some of that weight again after the loss of weight and deconditioning. A standard referral to a occupational therapist to assess and improve activities of daily living. Again, I'd be a little bit nervous about the word and for the assess and improve. I'd probably stick to one or the other. As long as you're having something in that kind of framing, I think you'll be okay. And really that's about trying to say, well, okay, you've deconditioned now, so certain things about the way you live your life are difficult. How can we modify the life to make those things easier or more achievable for you? Of course, standard referral to a psychologist to address treatment-related stresses or exposures, fatigue, depression, reactive depression, things like that. Recommending energy conservation techniques to manage fatigue. So actually pacing herself would hopefully take away some of those difficulties around feeling deconditioned. We should also advise regular sleep hygiene practices to improve overall recovery. Again, if you're kind of starting the day with a charged battery, it's going to set you up for more success. And of course, a standard referral to a social worker to explore community support services. Also really, really helpful for these kinds of situations.